Uh, the chapter we're in is we're chapter 3 of the book of Shmuel based, second Shmuel, second book of Samuel, second book of Shmuel, chapter 3. We're in the middle of the chapter. And what we've been talking about is we're at the situation, the story of Avner changing his course of life, changing his course of his activities. And until now, Avner was supporting Ishbosheth as being king, but he got into some type of a mess with Ishbosheth, and it had to do with the fact that he had married the king's Shaul's concubine, and Ishbosheth was a little surprised, was very surprised that he thought that he had the audacity to do that. And Avner felt that he is sort of like the king, or at least second in command to the king. And he somehow felt that he had the right to marry the previous king's concubine, because a regular commoner is not allowed to marry the king's concubine. But he felt he would be allowed to. The king's concubine's name was Ritzpah, and he felt he could marry her, and he did. And Ishbosheth put up a little fuss about it. And Avner said, listen, you're putting up a fuss. I'm going to go to the other side. And that's what he decided to do. Ishbosheth did not reply, and he didn't beg him to stay. And so Avner is basically decides that he's going to go to the other side to join David. We explained last time about how even though he initially felt that there's a verse that supports him backing Ishbosheth, but nevertheless, that support that he was supposed to support Ishbosheth doesn't say how long it's supposed to be. And at some point, the kingship is going to go back is going to go to David. And so he felt that Shaul reigned for 2 years. Ishbosheth reigned for 2 years. It's enough. Now that this story happened, let me just mute everyone. Okay, now that the story happened, Shaul, between Ishbosheth and Avner. So Avner said, this must be a sign from heaven that I should join David's army now. Problem is that Avner, he had a history. His history was that he was against David throughout. I mean, when David almost could have killed Shaul and he didn't, and Shaul wanted to make up with David, Avner was the one saying, it's not true. Don't be convinced that David loves you. It's not true. He's tricking you. He's lying to you. And so Avner does have he's got a skeleton in the closet where, he hasn't done the best things for David. Now, at the same time, he's considered a very righteous person, which does seem a little surprising. How could that be if he's sort of gossiping against David and causing David to go through so much suffering and potentially having the king kill David? How could we see Avner as being such a righteous person? But ultimately, that's the way David does see Avner. David sees Avner as a very righteous individual, a very holy person. And it must be that he felt that he needed to save the king. He had to be suspicious. There is a concept that you are obligated to protect yourself. Many of you are familiar with the fast day called Tzom Gedalia, the fast day of Gedalia ben Achikam. One of the reasons, the reason why we fast was because Gedalia was a very righteous individual, and he was murdered right near Rosh Hashanah, either on Rosh Hashanah or right after Rosh Hashanah. But basically, we fast the day after Rosh Hashanah in memory of him. What was his story? He had he had information that there was someone out there who wanted to kill him. And he didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to believe this Lashon Hara. And so he said, that can't be, it's not true. I'm not believing that. So the guy came to his house with his whole group. The person who they told him wants to kill you. And he invited them in and he gave them a meal for Rosh Hashanah. And because he didn't want to believe this Lashon Hara. And ultimately they murdered him. And the lesson is, obviously Gedaliah was a very righteous person, but the lesson is that you do have to take protection for yourself. And that is as much as we don't want to believe any gossip, but we do need to protect ourselves and protect our lives and other people's lives. So you have to do things in a way that you're not making yourself vulnerable. Even though we generally don't, we always don't like Lashon Hara. We don't, it's not allowed to talk Lashon Hara and speak, but this is considered a major important thing, life and death. We have to protect ourselves. So here also, Avner obviously was protecting the king by claiming that David is not sincere and David is really does want to kill you and he does want to rebel against your kingdom and so on. So that's where we're holding over here with the story of Avner deciding to join David's army. And what's interesting is here David actually believes Avner fully, and that is quite a powerful lesson. How David is willing to accept someone's tshuva. In other words, Avner is basically saying, I want to join you, and I want to bring everyone else to you. And he is retracting from what he's been doing for the last 2 years. And David accepts that. He says, okay, I'm gonna let you join. And so David tells him, I want you to bring Michal back. Now, bringing Michal back was something that we discussed a little last week. That Michal was his wife, and Michal, there was questionable about the legitimacy of the marriage, because it could be that there was a question about the marriage. What was the question? Well, David was supposed to receive wealth from Shaul for killing Plishtim. For killing Goliath, for killing the Goliath, and he was supposed to receive wealth. Now Shaul never gave it to him. That was called a loan. It was like a loan. In other words, he owed it to him, but he never gave it to him. Now, when you marry someone, you're supposed to give them a ring or some type of monetary value to be able to do the marriage. So the man is supposed to give the wife something of value. So here, David theoretically was saying to Shaul, okay, you owe me all that wealth that you promised me. You give me your daughter. That will be the money of the marriage, of the kiddushin, of the I don't know what the term would be in English, but it's the marriage, the money of marriage, like the ring. This will be like the ring. The problem is in Jewish law that doesn't work. You can't marry someone on a loan. You have to marry someone.
Rabbi, it's called a dowry.
Dowry. So the dowry, thank you. The dowry, dowry is not the gifts with it. It's the actual ring is also part of the dowry. Is that true? Okay.
No.
It could be.
The point is you cannot use a pre-existing debt, the cancellation of pre-existing debt to satisfy that.
But was it called dowry? Is that the right term?
I don't know what wedding rings are called, but I know the law.
Right. You can't use a pre-existing debt. Thank you. So the bottom line is, thank you, Yehuda and Isaac. So the bottom line is that the marriage was questionable because what was David basing his marriage on? If it was on that pre-existing debt, it doesn't work. On the other hand, David also was told by Shaul to kill 100 plishtim and give him 100 circumcisions. That was the obligation. If he did that, he would get Michal. Now David gave him 200 circumcisions of the plishtim, and he married Michal. Now Shaul said that David must have had in mind the money when he married Michal, and David said, "No, I was using the circumcisions. In other words, the little pieces, the tips. He was using that to be considered the marriage. Now the question is that valuable? Can you do anything with those pieces of skin, the circumcision pieces? And it could be David said, yeah, you could use it to feed animals. And as bottom line was that it was questionable, and this is from the Talmud. I'm not making anything up over here. This is in the Talmud. It discusses this debate between Shaul and David, and Shaul ended up giving Michal to another man. So here, what's going on is David is, now Shaul was killed, and David wants to get Michal, and Avner is now joining David. David says, "Let me put something in the contract. You want to join me and be part of my army? No problem. Bring me Michal from your side. I want you to bring her as just my wife." And the story is he does. He brings her, and David doesn't just not just satisfied with telling Avner to bring her. He sends a message to Ishbosheth and tells Ishbosheth, "I want you to send Michal as well." So the question is, why did David do that? Why did he ask Ishbosheth as well to send Michal? He wants Michal back. In other words, wasn't it enough to just tell Avner to do this? So the thing is that one of the commentaries here mentions, the Radak over here says that I want you to bring Avner. I want you to bring Michal, tells Avner, but he also tells Ishbosheth because he wants that to give Ishbosheth respect. He wants to give Ishbosheth respect, and he wants his permission. So what it seems like is he's just giving a little, he's doing what's right. He wants to do what's appropriate, and he's giving him a little honor. And so he's asking Ishbosheth also to give him permission, to give him Michal. Now there is another way of looking, another point that's brought down, and that is that he wants Ishbosheth to agree that the marriage is a kosher marriage. Shaul questioned the marriage. David is convinced that his marriage to Michal is proper. And David wants Ishbosheth to acknowledge that and admit that this is a proper marriage. And it's a little unclear if he means this in a halachic way, that he wants him to acknowledge halachically that it's a kosher marriage, or he wants it to be a sign that Ishbosheth is allowing me to take over the kingship because, I'm getting my wife back, and obviously this is a sign. I'm the son-in-law of the previous king now. If he has Michal, then he's the official son-in-law of Shaul, and so on. So it's a little unclear if what exactly the idea is in having Ishbosheth return to having Ishbosheth return Michal to David. Now, the other point that should be mentioned here is that Avner, what was his problem? He married the king's concubine. So what David really is telling Avner is, do you think you were right for marrying Ritzpah, the previous king's concubine? For sure, I should marry the daughter of the king, of the previous king. I should be able to get my wife back, Michal. So it was sort of like a little hint that maybe what you did wasn't right, that he's telling Avner, that maybe your marriage of Ritzpah was not 100% appropriate. Bottom line is that David is made this deal with Avner, and Ishbosheth does send Michal to David HaMelech and takes her away from her current husband. Her current husband was Palti ben Laish, and here the Torah the Tanakh calls him Paltiel, which means Hashem saved him. And it has to do, we mentioned about this, that that according to the Gemara, he never had relations with Michal because he was nervous that David was really married to Michal. So even though he was forced to sleep in the same bed, but he put a knife in the middle of the bed, saying that if he dares try to go on Michal's side, he deserves to be killed. Or if anyone moves over across the middle line, deserves to be killed with that sword. In other words, he was controlling his desire for all this time. And it says that when he brought her back, her husband accompanied her. This Paltiel, who we're calling him, he accompanied her. It says he was constantly weeping for her until Bacharim, until the place called Bacharim. And what that means is that he was weeping that he's not going to get merit anymore for controlling his strong desire for her, because she's not going to be there, so he's not going to get merit. So that's the understanding of the Gemara. There is a Abarbanel that says that Palti was more of a guardian for her than a husband, and Palti was crying that he got close to her. She was like a daughter, so to speak, and that's why he was crying. So that's another alternative interpretation over here. Yes, Ben.
What was his motivation to stay away from her? What was he waiting for?
Palti was nervous that she's a married woman. This is a death penalty. She's married
Why did he agree with Saul?
He had no choice. Saul was in charge, and Saul wanted to prove his point. And if you go against the king, you are rebellious and death penalty. So he had no choice. It was a matter of life and death. He had to follow through, at least outwardly, that that he was married to Michal, even though physically he didn't marry her.
Well, so if he didn't marry her, why is he walking after her and crying? He's not going to be marrying her anyhow.
Yeah. So that's what we explained, that he was crying that he's not getting merit for controlling his evil inclination anymore. And the Talmud says that he was greater even than Joseph and Boaz, the two great people who controlled their evil inclination. This Palti was even greater than both of them. We know Joseph controlled his Yetzer Hara, and he never had relations with Potiphar's wife. And
so he got a lot of merit.
He got a lot of merit.
Be happy with it.
Yeah, but he's missing out in more, in all the future merit. He's missing out, and which is an interesting thing, because we normally don't ask Hashem for a test. V'loyli de nisayon. We tell Hashem we don't want nisayon. We don't want to be tested, but here it's not that he wanted that she should she should stay with him, but he felt bad that he's losing out on the future. So he's not telling Hashem, I want you to test me, but he is saying that feeling bad that he's not getting merit anymore for this self-control that he's proven himself so far. So in any event, these are some of the interpretations that are brought over here, and the verse continues that Avner's message, verse 17, Avner's message. So we're in chapter 3, verse 17. Avner's message had been sent to all the elders of Israel, saying, from yesterday and before yesterday, you wanted David as king over you. So now do it. For Hashem has said of David, by the hand of my servant David, I shall save my people Israel from the hand of the Plishtim and from the hand of all their enemies. So Avner is trying to keep his promise, and which is that he is going to bring the entire Jewish people finally under one king. Until now, there was a division. Generally, it was the entire Jewish people against the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah chose David, and the rest of the Jewish people were with Ishbosheth. And why were they with Ishbosheth? It did have to do with Avner being a good campaigner. He campaigned that they shouldn't accept David. They should follow Ishbosheth. This is the remaining son of Shaul, and he found a verse supporting the fact that there should be another person from Shaul's family to be king, from the family of Benjamin to be king, and therefore he was a big campaigner, and he got the entire Jewish people to follow Ishbosheth. Now he's retracting everything, and he's deciding to go to the other side. And now he's campaigning everyone to try to join David, and so he's sending this message around, and he's telling them that Hashem anointed David, and David's going to be the one who's going to save us from the hands of the Plishtim and all the other nations. In verse 19, Avner also spoke in the ears of Benjamin, and that was the hardest group to convince. Because Benjamin is the people of Shaul's family. That's all the cousins and second cousins and third cousins. They're all from Benjamin. And Avner spoke in the ears of Benjamin. That then Avner also set out to speak in the ears of David in Hebron, that it was all good in the eyes of Israel. So Avner went to tell David that he managed to convince them to accept David, and that it was all good in the eyes of Israel and in the eyes of the entire house of Benjamin. So that's what he's telling them, that it's so far so good. He's been successful. Now, the next verse, verse 20, tells us, Avner came to David in Hebron, and with him 20 men, and David made a feast for Avner and the men who were with him. So Avner came to David, and he came with his people, and David made a feast for them. Now, there is a medrash that quotes this verse. The medrash says that there was an individual by the name of Bar Yochina. He was a nobleman from Rome, and he was arranging some type of a banquet or a special event, and he saw that there was a great Rabbi Eliezer was in town, so he decided he'll ask him for some advice. So he went to Rabbi Eliezer and he said, give me some advice about making a successful party. So sure enough, Rabbi Eliezer said, let me tell you something. You always got to make sure to have extra seatings. Make sure, you invite 20 people, set up for 25. That was his thing. And so, sure enough, Bar Yochina was thankful for this advice, and he made his event, but he didn't listen. He didn't take the advice seriously. And sure enough, what happened was that one extra person, he had 24 people come, and he set up exactly for 24 people. And turned out that a 25th person came, and he didn't have a place setting for him. But they quickly set it up and tried to arrange it. And the only problem was that there was one dish that they weren't able to serve to this person because there simply wasn't enough. So as a gesture of that apology, he gave him a golden plate. That extra person, he handed him a golden plate. But this Roman nobleman was fed up. He says, "What? You don't have? I'm going to eat this plate. How can I eat a plate? Can't eat a plate." And they made a whole fuss, and he made a fight, and it created a whole messed up situation. So sure enough, the host learned his lesson that he should have listened to Rabbi Eliezer. So the next time, he saw Rabbi Eliezer, he admitted to him, he said, "Listen, I didn't listen to your advice." And sure enough, it was a flop. The whole thing turned out to be a flop. And he said, "But let me ask you a question." He says, "Is it true that Hashem gives you that he gives these advice about how to prepare for guests and so on?" So he said, "Yes, in fact, it is true." Rabbi Eliezer said, and he brought a source from this pasuk, the pasuk here, where it says that the party that David made for Avner. What does it say? That it says he made the party for Avner v'la anoshim, and for the people that were with him. So the message that we see from this verse is how important it is to always prepare for all the additional people and to give them respect and honor for anyone that's going to participate and come, and they shouldn't be embarrassed or feel excluded from the party. And some say that you actually see it from the extra, the reason he advised him 5 extra portions is because there are 5 extra words in the pasuk. It says, could have just said David made a mishteh. And so one of the commentaries mentions, it says 5 extra words here. It says Avner anoshim asher itai la'avner v'la'anoshim asher itai mishteh. It could have just said that he vayas mishteh instead of vayas David mishteh. So David, Avner, Anoshim, Asher, Itai, those 5 words. It could have just said vayas mishteh, and because it says these extra 5 words, he learned that you're supposed to do 5 extra place settings. Now, I'm not telling you have to do that. It doesn't say this in Shulchan Aruch, I don't think, but it is an interesting insight that's brought in one of the midrashim in the book of Esther. It's actually brought. So the story over here, which shows how David cared about each individual. I think it's an important point that this Medrash brings out, that he was careful to give each of these, they're just extra people, but he gave them the proper respect. Anyway, the verse continues in verse 21. And the verse 21 says, Abner said to David, I shall arise and go to rally all of Israel behind my lord the king, so that they will seal a covenant with you, that you may reign over all that your soul desires. And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. So the story is that Avner is now campaigning more to get to accomplish, the ultimate goal of getting everyone to join and accept David as the king. The verse 22 says, just then, behold, the servants of David and Yoav were returning from a raid and brought many spoils with them. Abner was no longer with David in Hebron, for he had already sent him away, and he had left in peace. When Yoav and all the army that was with him arrived, they told Yoav, saying, Abner, the son of Ner, came to the king, and he sent him away, and he left in peace. So Yoav came to the king and said, what have you done? Behold, Abner came to you. Why did you send him away and allow him to leave? You know, Abner, the son of Ner, that he has come to entice you and to learn of your comings and goings and to learn all that you do. So Yoav is doing what's you would think is a normal thing, because Yoav is trying to protect himself and protect the king. Yoav is actually the king's nephew, and his mother is the sister of David, his mother Tsuria, and yet Yoav is very upset that David is not taking proper protection for himself. He should realize that this Abner is probably trying to learn the ins and outs, and ultimately he's going to wipe everyone out. He's going to learn your tricks. He's not sincere. And David did not reply. Yoav then left David's presence and sent messengers after Abner. And they brought him back from the place called Bor Hasira. But David did not know that Yoav did this. So Yoav is playing some type of trick over here. He sends messengers to Abner that David had one more thing he has to tell you before you go on this mission. You got to come back. So Yoav is making up a story in order to get Abner to come back. In this way, he can kill him. Now, you have to keep in mind what's going on over here. Yoav, on the one hand, he wants to protect David and protect all the other people there. At the same time, Yoav has a inner hatred towards Abner, because if you remember from the previous chapter, Abner did two things. Number one is he made some type of a wrestling match, Abner. It ultimately led to deaths. It was Abner's idea about having some type of wrestling match, which he thought of as just a joke, but it ended up causing a lot of deaths. And Abner, in the end of that wrestling match, what ended up happening was Yoav's brother, Asoel, went to try to kill Abner. And Abner tried to convince him to stop while you're ahead. And he refused. And Abner had no choice but to kill Asoel. So Yoav has a personal hatred towards Abner. So on the one hand, there is some sincerity that, he's concerned that Abner is not safe to be, and you got to protect the kid. He wants to protect himself, protect his uncle David, and protect all the other people there. At the same time, he also has a personal grievance against this Avner, because Avner had killed his brother. Now, there is a difference of opinion over here as to how guilty was Avner wrong. Yoav thinks that Avner should have tried to save the life of his brother Asoel and just somehow wound him or maim him, make him not be able to do anything, but he shouldn't have killed him. And Avner claims that he had no choice. He couldn't think straight. He had to just do anything to save his life. He didn't have the opportunity to make that decision of exactly how to wound him in a way that wouldn't kill him. And Yoav argues back to him, and he says, well, if you were able to aim so perfectly at his fifth rib, then you did have the ability to make that choice. If you aimed so perfectly at the fifth rib, then you obviously could have decided to hurt him and not kill him. And therefore you are guilty of the death penalty, because you killed someone who you could have just wounded. And Avner's answer to that obviously is that it was by mistake that he killed him in the fifth rib. He didn't mean to kill him specifically in the fifth rib. Just happened to be that he killed him in the fifth rib, and he tried to protect himself and kill him, and he killed him in any way possible, and he wasn't thinking which rib. But obviously that didn't matter to Yoav, and Yoav felt that he had the right to kill Avner. So I must preface all this with the fact that the history is not always the most beautiful thing that we're learning it. It's part of our history and our heritage, but at the same time, some of these stories are somewhat sad, are pretty sad that they happened, but they are part of the history, and each thing has a lesson that we're supposed to learn from it. And Judaism doesn't hide the truth. It's all written there, and even though it would be nicer if we thought, these stories didn't happen, but it's written there, and there's part of the Torah, and it's part of the teaching that Hashem Hashem dictated these words to the prophets to write, and so they're meant for us to learn from, even though they aren't the most beautiful stories that we would initially choose to include in our history book. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, but Yoav knows that Avner didn't kill him by mistake.
That's true.
He killed him to stop him, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, but
so
if you
he's a goel of the blood of his brother, is what he's trying to do.
He's a goel of the blood of his brother if he thinks that Avner was guilty of death. But if he's not guilty of committing murder, then he's not a goel hadam, because you don't do goel hadam when the person doesn't do murder.
Yeah,
when there's a murder, then
that's what you mean. That's what you mean when you're saying you should have stopped him somehow, wound him or stop him and not kill him.
Right.
So if he killed him, he meant to kill him. And that's why it's a goel adam.
That is one way of looking at it. That's Yoav's way of looking at it, is that Avner was a murderer and he could be a goel hadam. But there is the opposite way of looking at it, that could be that Avner had no other choice. He had to kill him. He couldn't have wounded him. It wouldn't have worked. We didn't have the ability to wound him and figure out a way. It was a moment decision that had to be immediate and save his life. And so therefore, there is the other way of looking at it. And so let's see how this plays out over here.
Rabbi,
Yes.
do you think that this is an accurate portrayal of the situation?
Well, of course it's accurate. This is
as far as there was no other way to get around. He had to kill the guy's brother. There was no other way. In other words, is there any place else that supports this was the only way?
So you hold on, because we're going to see something in verse 27.
Sorry.
So verse 26 says that Yoav then left David's presence and sent messengers after Avner. They brought him back to this bar Hasira, and David did not know about this, even though it was in his name that they said, David wants you to come back. So Avner is going to come back. So 27 is when Avner returned to Hebron, Yoav led him aside to the middle of the gateway. And the Hebrew term here in verse 27 is Toich HaSha'ar. Now, the Sha'ar often means the gate of the Sanhedrin. So the Gemara actually interprets it that way, and that it refers to, in fact, Rashi brings it over here, Lefnei HaSanhedrin, L'yishafet al dam ha'sohel ochiv. So he brought him to the Bezdin, the court, to see, what does the court say? Because he killed Asael. He wanted the court to give him the death penalty, or to give him so he led him there to talk to him casually. And that word is also an interesting word, bashali. Bashali is a little unclear what it means. It's not a common word. But the way it translates it here is casually, like at peace. The shalom, the Radak over here says, or suddenly. Another shot is suddenly. Now, and he struck him there in the fifth rib, and he died as revenge for the blood of his brother Asoil. So here we have this next murder. So first, Avner killed Asohel, and now Yoav is killing Avner. And so the understanding, the way this is brought in the Gemara and in the Medrash, is that he brought him to the Bezdin, to the Sanhedrin, and he said, "Why did you kill Asoel?" And he said, self-defense. And he said, "I couldn't, why didn't you just injure him?" He says, "I couldn't aim so exactly, but you were able to strike him in the fifth rib." And right when he said that, before the court even made a decision, Yoav went and killed Avner in the fifth rib. And that's basically the way. So the court didn't even render any judgment. This was like discussion in the court, and all of a sudden, Avner just gave that blow and killed. Yoav gave the blow and killed Avner. Now, what was the sin? What did Avner really do to deserve the death penalty? So the commentaries do give a few of the insights into. We know a little about it, why Avner deserved to die, and even though he is considered to be a very righteous person. So it mentions a few reasons are brought. One of them is that he deserved the death penalty because he did start that contest. Now let me mute everyone here. Okay, he did create a contest of wrestling match, and caused a lot of deaths. So according to so that is one reason why Avner deserved to die. Another reason why he deserved to die was that he did something that was insulting to the king when he sent him the initial letter saying that he wants to join the king, he wants to join David's side. He put his name on top of David's, implying it's like, as much as you're the king, but I am the commander in chief, general, and I play an important role. And that is a crucial role. And that was considered rebellious. And so that would be another reason why he acted in a rebellious way to the king. And of course, the simple reason why he deserved to die was because he caused, he got Shaul, he was the one who made up stories to Shaul to hate David, which is David could have killed Shaul, and instead of killing him, he cut off a corner of the garment of Shaul, and because he did that, he tried to convince Shaul that you see, I'm not here to kill you. I don't want to kill you. Why are you running after me? And Avner was the one who convinced Shaul to keep on fighting, and he did that twice. The second time, or at least he didn't stick up and didn't trust David the second time. The first time he convinced him to keep on fighting, and the second time he definitely didn't acknowledge that David might be honest and might be right, and because of that, he is considered to have sinned and deserve to die. Another explanation is that he delayed the Malchus based David. He was the one who was delaying the Malchus based David, the kingship of David, and therefore he deserved to die. He was messing with the kingship of David because he chose to go on the side of Ishbosheth. Now you have to understand this explanation, because this explanation doesn't flow so smoothly, because we know that Avner had a pasuk that he was basing. He had a verse that he based his choice of voting for Ishbaishas and keeping with Ishbaishas. He had a pasuk that he believed that it says about Binyamin that Melacha mechalotzecha yetzeyu, there will be a plural kings, that it won't just be Shaul, but it will be an additional king will come out of Benjamin. And therefore, he had a verse, he said, must be that Ishbaishas is supposed to be king. So how can we now blame Avner if he was interpreting a verse that implies that Ishbaishas was meant to be king? And to answer that question, the understanding is that he must have also had a personal reason why he was joining Ishbaishas. If he only solely meant it for Hashem, he would not have been punished. But because he must have had a personal agenda as well, that means he did find a verse, but he must have also had a personal agenda that he wanted to maybe get the honor of being the commander and be able to be in charge and so on. And so he was benefiting from having Ishbaishas, the king, and therefore he is now punished for pushing off the Malchus base David. Yes, Mordechai.
Yeah, you had mentioned before about one of the reasons that he was possibly guilty of death is because of telling Shmuel various things. It seems that throughout David's life, he kept running into problems where people were getting into danger because people were talking about him. If you look into Tehillim and the Nuns, there were a few Tehillim there that start out with where the Tehillim was written because somebody was talking about him or that he was doing something.
Correct. Yes, there are some Tehillims about all the people that are against me. Rabim Kamim Olai, right?
Making noise.
There's numerous Tehillims, correct, about that. That is correct. That is correct. Thank you for bringing that up. That's right. There are some Sukkim about that in Tehillim.
Rabbi Smith?
Yes, Philip, please.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Are you saying then that Avner wanted Ishbosheth to be the king so he could be a commander for him?
That initially, this was the initial thing for the 2 years, and now that 2 years are up and he got into a fight with Ishbaishas, now he joined David. But now he's also was killed because he was punished for those 2 years that he was campaigning for Ishbaishas. And not only campaigning, he was the commander-in-chief over the commander general of the army for Ishbaishas and running the entire show. And but he's getting punished, even though he found the pasuk even though he was really relying on a pasuk that he was in order to do what he was doing. So I explained that in addition to the pasuk, he also had a personal agenda.
Rabbi, one more thing. Was it during that period when he was sporting Ishbosheth that he sponsored this wrestling match that resulted in the deaths?
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue. Verse 28. Verse 28, when David heard afterwards that Avner, what happened, that Yoav killed Avner, he declared, I and my kingdom are guiltless before Hashem forever for the blood of Avner, the son of Ner. I had nothing to do with this. Verse 29, the guilt shall rest upon the head of Yoav and upon all his father's house, and may there never cease from Yoav's house contaminated men, lepers, those who lean on crutches, who fall by the sword, and who lack food. They should always have, in other words, he's now cursing the house of Yoav. And what that means is, even though it's his nephew, but he really should get the death penalty. But he explains later why he didn't give the death penalty, but he is mourning greatly over Avner's death. And he wants to make it very clear that he had no part of this. This was the worst thing that could have happened for his campaign, because now it looks like he's just murdering anyone that's possibly in his way, and he just wants to be king, and he just wants to do things whatever is fits him best, and he's murdering people for no reason. Yes, Susan.
What is the word exactly for contaminated souls in Hebrew?
Well, here the term that the verse uses is zav and Mitzayra. Well, Mitzayra is leper. Zav is the one that's contaminated. It's a certain type of impurity that is a.
I know what that is. Right.
It's a type of impurity that's called. They some translate it as gonorrhea, but it has to do with the weakness that the person is weak as well. It comes with a certain weakness. So so David cursed Yoav, his nephew, and his brother Avishai. And Yoav and all his father's house, I should say. And may there never cease from Yoav's house all these people that lean on crutches, fall by the sword, and who lack food. And Yoav and his brother Avishai had killed Avner because he had killed their brother Asael in Givon in the battle. Now, one of the commentaries says an interesting thing. The Barbanel over here says an interesting point. He says, what do these exact curses have to do with Yoav? How are they connected to what Yoav did? So he says, well, there's three reasons that Yoav was upset with Avner, with regard to Avner making this peace treaty with David. So one of the problems he had was that he felt that he's the trusted friend of the king, Yoav. And Avner is basically going to take that away. Avner might now become the trusted friend of the king, and he's going to lose that special connection he has. And so he was nervous about that. The second thing he was worried about is that he's losing his military power, because until now, Yoav was the chief commanding officer, chief general, and in the army, and now Avner might take that over. So he's losing his military special his title of being the he might lose that. And the third thing that he was worried about is simply he might lose his job, so financial security. And so these three things are all connected to the curses that Yoav was that David cursed Yoav with. The first thing he cursed him with is that he will be contaminated and a leper, and he will lean on crutches, and actually the way this interpretation explains it, you divide up these the curses. So the one that's the leper and the zav, which is this contaminated person, people stay away from anyone that's that's a leper, of course, leprosy, and contaminated people stay away from. So you thought that you were going to be the trusted friend of the king. Now everyone's going to stay away from you. You're not going to have the popularity that your whole goal was popularity. Now you're losing all popularity. Once you have leprosy, and once you have the contamination, you lose all your fame and your being the popular, your popularity, I should say. Now the next thing that he's going to be on crutches, and which means that he will lose the military power, and being on crutches makes you that you can't do anything. If you lose your if you're on crutches, you're not fighting anyone on crutches, and ultimately you have nothing to do with the military. And then the financial security, he cursed him that in his house everyone should be poor. And what that means is that you wanted to have financial security. That's why you were against Avner. So therefore, you will lose all your financial security. Everyone's going to be poor, and you won't have any sustenance anyway. Now, that's a very interesting point, because what that really says is that what Yoav did to Avner, in addition to wanting to take revenge, which was not something that the court agreed to. The court had never given their final verdict that it was acceptable. And it definitely is questionable if it was acceptable or not. But in addition to that, even the even the entire intent of Yoav, it had numerous other issues as well, that he was so concerned about everything that Avner was going to do, that he was so to speak, paranoid that he's losing everything, he's considered that it's not just an issue of his what he did as killing Avner, but it's also all of his thoughts that were going through his mind, why he wants to get rid of Avner. So it wasn't just the revenge. In other words, he killed him for numerous reasons. It comes out he didn't just kill him as revenge, but he was also thinking that he's going to save himself from all these other issues which were affecting his mind to make this decision of killing him. And so that's basically the story over here of Yoav killing Avner. Now, what is interesting is that it says here, Yoav and his brother Avishai had killed Avner because he had killed their brother Asahel in Givon in the battle. And it mentions this again, in other words, it emphasizes, where did he kill Avner? What did Avner do? Avner had killed Asahel in battle. And what it's saying is that look at the contrast between Yoav, what Yoav did, and what Avner did. Avner killed Asahel in battle. He had no choice. He had to protect himself. But Yoav went and killed Avner in cold blood. So in other words, it really contrasts these two people, these two murders. Contrast the two murders. Okay, so the next verse is 31. David said to Yoav and to all the people who were with him, tear your clothes and don sackcloth and lament over Avner. King David himself walked behind the coffin, and they buried Avner in Hebron. And the king raised his voice and wept at Avner's grave, and all the people wept. The king lamented for Avner and said, and he gave this dirge, should Avner have died in the death of a novel, a lowly person? Your hands were not bound, your feet were not placed in chains, and as one who falls before villains have you fallen. And all the people wept even more over him. And all the people came to comfort David by bringing him a meal on the same day. But David swore, saying, so shall God do to me, and so shall he do further if I taste any bread or anything else before the sun sets. And so what David really wants to do here is make it very clear that he is not behind this murder, and he was not supportive of it. And all the people recognized David's sincerity. It was good in their eyes. Whatever the king did was good in the eyes of all the people. And all the people and all of Israel realized on that day that it was not ordered by the king to kill Abner, the son of Ner. So that's ultimately what David wanted, to make it very clear that he was not behind that murder. We're going to stop here. I want to wish you all a very good evening, and we'll see you in Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.